The mercenaries' a rivaled outsider at Nexus Station Captain Sarah Chen's boots echoed through the pristine corridors of Nexus Station, each step a stark reminder that she didn't belong among the polished diplomats and gleaming technology. Her combat suit bore the scars of 1,000 battles, patched and repatched with whatever materials she could find in the Outer Rim territories. But it was her helmet that drew the most attention and the most ridicule. The ancient piece of human military hardware was a patchwork of dents, scratches, and what appeared to be primitive markings carved directly into the metal. To the casual observer, it looked like the desperate repairs of someone too poor or too stubborn to replace their equipment. The alien delegates who passed her in the hallways whispered among themselves, their translation, devices picking up words like primitive, barbaric, and pathetic. The Grand Assembly, the central chamber of Nexus Station, was a marvel of engineering, a massive sphere suspended in space with transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the stars. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for what many believed would be the last diplomatic summit before total war consumed 3 entire star systems. The Zephyrians sat in their crystalline hover chairs, their elongated forms draped in robes that seemed to be woven from liquid light. Their civilization had mastered energy manipulation to such a degree that they considered physical matter beneath their notice. Across from them, the Koroth delegation occupied reinforced platforms that could support their massive rock-like bodies. These ancient beings had turned warfare into an art form, treating every conflict as a sacred ritual of strength and honor. Between these two proud races sat the Veltar, insectoid creatures whose hive-mind intelligence had conquered dozens of worlds through coordinated swarm tactics. Their chittering filled the chamber like the sound of 1,000 typewriters, each individual linked to the collective consciousness that guided their species. Sarah took her position at the small human delegation table, aware that every eye in the chamber was upon her. The other human representatives wore pristine diplomatic uniforms, their equipment gleaming with the latest technology. She looked like a relic from a bygone age. The Mockery Begins ambassador, ZYXera of the Zephyrians, was the first to speak, her melodious voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. Honored delegates, we have gathered to prevent the extinction of our civilizations. Yet, I must question why the humans have sent someone who appears to have already suffered such a fate. Ripples of what passed for laughter echoed from various delegations. Even some of the human representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sarah remained motionless, her damaged helmet reflecting the chamber's ambient lighting. Commander Torgash of the Koroth delegation rumbled his agreement. The warriors' equipment tells the story of their battles. This human's gear speaks only of defeat and desperation. How can such weakness guide us to victory? The Veltar Queen's translator buzzed with electronic approximations of their species, dismissive clicking. The collective observes equipment maintenance as a primary indicator of cognitive function. This specimen suggests severe degradation in human military standards. Sarah finally stood, the servos in her ancient suit whining softly as they compensated for movement. She walked to the center of the chamber, her steps slow and measured. The mockery continued around her, but she began to speak in a voice that carried despite its quiet tone. The first revelation, you see failure, Sarah said, reaching up to touch a particular dent near her helmet's left temple. I see history. She turned slowly, allowing each delegation to observe the intricate patterns of damage across her headgear. This mark here, for instance, came from a Threnodai warsinger's sonic blade during the Battle of Crimson Nebula. The chamber fell silent. The Threnodai had been a legendary warrior culture, extinct for over 2 centuries. Their sonic weapons were considered myths by most of the younger races. This gouge along the crown, Sarah continued, indicating a deep scar that ran from front to back, was made by a Cardhack berserker's plasma claw. The last of their kind died, defending their homeworld against a Zephyrian fleet. Several Zephyrian delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Cardhack War had been officially classified as a police action in their historical records. And these, Sarah's voice grew quieter as she pointed to a series of small, precise cuts near the helmet's base, were carved by Veltar warriors during the siege of Altair Prime. Each cut represents a fallen Hive soldier who chose honor over the collective survival instinct. The Veltar queen's antennae twitched with what might have been recognition or distress. The Altair incident was not spoken of in polite Veltar society. The weight of memory Sarah began walking around the chamber's perimeter, her helmet catching the light at different angles as she moved. Each new perspective revealed additional markings, scars, and modifications that hadn't been visible before. The Karathi left their mark here, she said, touching a spiral pattern near her right ear. The last free Karathi fleet made their stand at the edge of forever. They fought for 17 days without rest, without reinforcement, without hope. When their ammunition ran out, they used their ships as weapons. When their ships were gone, they fought with tools. When their tools broke, they fought with their bare hands. Her voice never rose above a conversational tone, but something in her delivery made every word carry the weight of absolute truth. The Karathi believed that a warrior's spirit lived on in the scars they left on their enemies. By that logic, 47 Karathi warriors still live in this helmet. The pattern emerges as Sarah continued her circuit of the chamber. A pattern began to emerge. Each mark, each dent, each seemingly random bit of damage corresponded to a different extinct civilization. The Drakmari Void Walkers, who had vanished into the space between galaxies rather than surrender. The ether-born energy beings, who had sacrificed their immortal existence to save their mortal allies. The grim stone shapers, who had literally moved mountains to shield refugee convoys from orbital bombardment. With each revelation, the mockery in the chamber transformed into something else. Recognition dawned, first among the military representatives, those who had studied the legendary battles that shaped galactic history. But even the diplomats began to understand what they were seeing. This wasn't the equipment of a failure or a scavenger. This was a living monument to warrior cultures that had chosen extinction over surrender, honor over survival, sacrifice over self-preservation. The human difference. You wonder why humans were invited to this summit, Sarah said, finally returning to her original position. Your civilizations have existed for millennia. You have technologies we can barely comprehend, wisdom accumulated over eons, power that could reshape reality itself. What could a young race like humanity possibly offer? She gestured to her helmet. We remember. The simple statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Zephyrians, for all their energy mastery, rarely concerned themselves with physical records. The Korath honored only the strongest, letting the memory of the weak fade away. The Veltar collective processed information efficiently, discarding data deemed irrelevant to current objectives. Every mark on this helmet represents a conversation, Sarah continued. A dying warrior who wanted someone to know their story. A final message from a civilization that refused to let their culture vanish silently. A last request from species who knew they were ending but hoped their lessons might save others. The war's true nature ambassador, ZYXera, leaned forward in a crystalline chair, her form shimmering with barely controlled energy. You speak of the past, human. We are here to discuss the future. The current conflict threatens to destroy us all. The current conflict is the past, Sarah replied. This war between your three civilizations follows the same pattern I've seen 47 times before. Pride meets pride. Strength challenges strength. Honor demands blood, and blood demands more blood, until entire species choose extinction over the appearance of weakness. Commander Torgash's massive form shifted, causing his platform to groan under the weight. You suggest we are merely repeating ancient mistakes? I suggest you're about to become ancient mistakes, Sarah said. In 50 years, another human like me might wear the marks your civilizations will leave. The question is whether those marks will tell stories of wisdom and compromise, or just another tale of three proud species who chose death over dialogue. The challenge accepted. The Veltar Queen's translator crackled to life. The collective inquires, what evidence supports the human's pattern recognition? How does primitive observation supersede advanced strategic analysis? Sarah smiled behind her helmet's visor. Because I've stood where you're standing now, I've heard the same arguments, the same justifications, the same certainties, and I've watched the same ending play out every time. She paused, letting her words sink in. Except once. The chamber waited. The Alfenians, Sarah said, a warrior culture as proud as any that ever existed. They faced the same choice you face now. Fight to the death or find another way. They chose dialogue, compromise. They chose to live. She touched a smooth spot on her helmet where no scars marred the surface. The Alfenians still exist. They trade with humanity now, sharing stories and knowledge instead of trading deaths and defeats. The summit's true purpose as the first session of the summit drew to a close, the delegations dispersed to their private chambers to discuss what they had witnessed. But Sarah remained in the central sphere, standing alone among the stars. She wasn't just a mercenary or a historian or even a diplomat. She was something the galaxy had never seen before, a human who collected not victories or defeats, but lessons. Every scar on her helmet represented a choice, and every choice had led to extinction except one. Tomorrow, the real negotiations would begin. The three civilizations would present their grievances, their demands, their red lines that could never be crossed. They would posture and threaten and prepare for the war that seemed inevitable. But tonight, in the quiet of the observation chamber, Sarah Chun polished her helmet and prepared to add either 3 new scars or 1 smooth spot to its surface. The galaxy's future hung in the balance, and for the first time in her career, she wasn't sure which outcome was more likely. The stars watched silently as they had watched the rise and fall of civilizations for billions of years. But tonight, they might witness something new. A human teaching the galaxy how to choose survival over honor, wisdom over pride, and hope over history. The map of legends the morning of Revelation Dawn broke over Nexus Station in the form of filtered starlight, the massive orbital platform rotating to face its parent star. Captain Sarah Chun had not slept. Instead, she had spent the night in her quarters, methodically cleaning and maintaining her equipment while reviewing diplomatic files on the 3 civilizations that might soon tear each other apart. Her helmet sat on the small table before her, and in the gentle illumination of her quarters' lighting system, the full extent of its markings became visible. What had appeared as random damage in the harsh fluorescence of the assembly chamber revealed itself to be an intricate tapestry of history. Each mark positioned with deliberate precision at a soft chime announced a visitor. Sarah opened her door to find Professor Yuki Tanaka, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist and one of the few humans who understood the true significance of what they had witnessed the previous day. The scholar's recognition. I couldn't sleep either, Professor Tanaka said, settling into the spare chair. Her eyes were immediately drawn to the helmet. Sarah, do you realize what you've created here? Sarah continued her methodical cleaning of a plasma rifle component. A conversation starter? A chronicle, Tanaka breathed, the most complete record of extinct warrior cultures in the known galaxy. Museums would kill for a fraction of this historical data. She leaned closer, studying the intricate patterns. May I? Sarah nodded, and Tanaka lifted the helmet with reverence typically reserved for religious artifacts. This spiral pattern here from the Karathi. I've only seen this design in fragmentary cave paintings on their dead worlds. But this is perfect. It tells their whole creation myth in compressed symbolic form. The language of scars as Tanaka continued her examination, Sarah began to explain the stories behind individual markings. Each scar was more than simple battle damage. It was a deliberate communication from dying civilizations to anyone who might remember them. The Threnodai war singers didn't just fight with sonic weapons, Sarah said, pointing to the mark near her left temple. They sang their history into battle. Each note carried the memory of their ancestors, their culture, their hopes for the future. When the last war singer struck my helmet, she wasn't trying to kill me. She was trying to ensure her people's song would survive. Tanaka's fingers traced the gouge left by the Carthack berserker. The plasma claw marks show microfractures in a specific pattern. It's like a fingerprint, but more. It's a genetic marker that identifies not just the individual warrior, but their entire family lineage. Commander Velkon of the 7th Claw Pack, Sarah confirmed. He told me the names of his ancestors going back 12 generations before he died. Each name is encoded in the metal's crystalline structure now. The Veltar's secret the conversation was interrupted by another chime. This time, Sarah's visitor was unexpected. A single Veltar drone separated from its collective for the first time in its existence. The insectoid being trembled as it entered, its compound eyes reflecting the room's light in prismatic patterns. Individual designation seeks private audience. The drone's translator crackled. Collective awareness temporarily suspended for cultural preservation protocol. Sarah and Tanaka exchanged glances. Veltar individuals were never separated from the collective consciousness. This was unprecedented. Speak freely, Sarah said. The drone approached the helmet with obvious reverence. Scarification patterns confirm historical records, thought lost. Altair Prime Siege generated individual consciousness breakthrough in 732 drones. Collective archived event as malfunction, but drones retain distinct memories. Tanaka's eyes widened. You remember the individual Veltar who broke from the hive mind? This unit carries genetic memory of Warrior Prime Zektai, designation Broken Chain. Broken Chain chose individual death over collective survival. Action deemed impossible by hive protocols, but helmet markings prove occurrence. The drone's antennae quivered with what might have been emotion. Broken Chain's sacrifice allowed 7 civilian hive ships to escape Altair's system. The Korath awakening as if summoned by the drone's revelation, the chamber's communication system activated. Commander Torgash of the Korath delegation appeared in holographic form. His massive stone-like features arranged in what Sarah had learned to recognize as deep contemplation. Human Chun, the Korath rumbled, my warriors have spent the night analyzing your helmet's markings. The Cardhack Berserker's claw strikes follow the pattern of the ritual of final honor. This is not random battle damage. Sarah nodded. Commander Velkon performed the complete ceremony before engaging me in combat. It took 6 hours. He could have easily killed me during the ritual, but that wasn't the point. The point was to ensure the ritual was witnessed and recorded, Torgash said. The Cardhack believed that a warrior culture could only truly die if its ceremonies were forgotten. By allowing you to survive, Velkon ensured his people's final honor would be remembered. The holographic Korath leaned forward. How many of these rituals do you carry? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. All of them. The weight of 47 civilizations over the next several hours, representatives from all 3 major delegations found reasons to visit Sarah's quarters. Word had spread through the station's diplomatic corps that the human mercenaries' equipment contained historical treasures beyond measure. The Zephyrians arrived in force, their energy forms crackling with excitement as they identified markings from civilizations they had encountered centuries ago. Elder Elwyxandra, their most senior historian, wept openly as she recognized the signature burn pattern left by an ether-born energy being. The ether-born were our teachers, she whispered. They showed us how to transcend physical matter, how to exist as pure energy. When the Devourer's swarm threatened our worlds, the ether-born sacrificed their immortality to create the barriers that still protect our core systems. Sarah touched the spiral burn mark gently. Seraph Talwanara made this mark as she died. She wanted you to know that your civilization's survival was worth their species' extinction. The pattern becomes clear as each delegation shared their knowledge of the extinct civilizations represented on Sarah's helmet. A disturbing pattern emerged. Every single one of these warrior cultures had faced the same choice now confronting the Zephyrians, Korath, and Veltar, compromise their principles or face extinction. Every single one had chosen extinction. Professor Tanaka compiled the data throughout the day, creating a comprehensive database of extinct civilizations. The results were staggering. 47 distinct warrior cultures had vanished from the galaxy in the past 5 centuries, each taking with them irreplaceable knowledge, art, and perspectives. It's not random. Tanaka concluded as she presented her findings to the assembled delegations that evening. There's an acceleration pattern. These extinctions are happening more frequently, and they're all following the same template: pride before pragmatism, honor before survival. The Zephyrian Confession Elder, Lyx Andra, rose from her crystalline chair, her energy form dimming with what appeared to be shame. We have not been entirely truthful about our role in these extinctions. The Zephyrian archives contain records of 43 extinct civilizations. We made contact with 37 of them. The chamber fell silent. In each case, we offered them the choice to join our energy transcendence program or maintain their primitive physical forms. When they refused, we classified them as evolutionary dead ends and withdrew our protection from their territories. Commander Torgash's platform groaned as he shifted his massive weight. The Korath Codex contains similar records. We offered 23 civilizations the chance to prove their warrior worth through ritual combat. Those who declined our challenges were deemed unfit for existence. The Veltar Queen remained silent for several minutes, her collective consciousness processing the revelations. When she finally spoke, her translator conveyed a tone of profound regret. The collective acknowledges participation in selective extinction protocols. 19 warrior cultures rejected integration into Veltar Hivemind network. Collective determined individual consciousness was inefficient survival strategy. These species were designated for natural selection acceleration. Sarah stood slowly, her helmet reflecting the chamber's lights like a mirror of guilt. So, all 3 of your civilizations systematically eliminated any culture that wouldn't conform to your worldview. And now you're about to do the same thing to each other. The mirror of history, the silence, stretched for long minutes as the implications sank in. The 3 great civilizations that had come to this summit to prevent their mutual destruction were the same forces that had driven 47 other cultures to extinction through their inflexibility and arrogance. The human's helmet is not just a record of the dead, Elder Lyx Andra said, quietly. It is a mirror reflecting our own future. Commander Torgash nodded gravely. We have been measuring our enemy's warrior worth while ignoring our own cowardice in the face of change. The Veltar Queen's antennae drooped. Collective efficiency protocols have eliminated adaptive diversity required for long-term survival. Current conflict represents system failure on civilizational scale. The living exception Sarah reached up and touched the smooth patch on her helmet where no scars marred the surface. There is one civilization that chose differently. The Althenians faced the same choice 40 years ago. They were proud warriors, as proud as any of you. But when extinction threatened, they chose adaptation over annihilation. She activated a holographic display showing a thriving world, its cities gleaming with advanced technology, and its people moving with the confident grace of a civilization at peace. The Althenians today are stronger than they ever were as pure warriors. They've learned to be diplomats, explorers, teachers. They've kept their warrior traditions alive while expanding beyond them. Professor Tanaka stepped forward with additional data. The Althenians have made contact with survivors from 6 supposedly extinct civilizations. They've provided sanctuary for refugee populations and helped them rebuild. Their world is now home to the largest concentration of diverse warrior cultures in the galaxy. The choice unveiled as the second day of the summit drew to a close. The 3 delegations faced a stark realization. They had come to Nexus Station believing they were negotiating to prevent a war. In reality, they were deciding whether to become the 48th, 49th, and 50th civilizations to earn a place on Sarah Chen's helmet. The human mercenary had spent 2 days showing them not just the consequences of their choices, but the pattern that led to those consequences. Every extinct civilization had been offered alternatives to extinction. Every single one had rejected those alternatives rather than compromise their cultural purity. Now the Zephyrians, Korath, and Veltar stood at the same crossroads, with the same choice, facing the same consequences. Tomorrow would bring the final session of the summit. The delegations would present their final positions, their unbreachable demands, their lines in the sand that could never be crossed. And Sarah Chun would discover whether her helmet would need 3 new scars or 1 new smooth patch. The stars outside Nexus Station continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the civilizations that rose and fell beneath their light. But tonight, 3 proud species had seen their future reflected in the scars of the past, and for the first time in their histories, they began to question whether pride was worth the price of survival. The final hour of decision, the final session of the Nexus Station Summit convened at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. The chamber that had witnessed mockery 3 days earlier now held an atmosphere thick with tension and possibility. Representatives from across the galaxy watched as 3 civilizations prepared to choose between extinction and evolution. Captain Sarah Chun entered the chamber carrying not just her scarred helmet, but a small case containing materials that had never been seen by alien eyes. As she took her position at the human delegation table, every being in the room understood that they were witnessing a moment that would reshape galactic history. The 3 major delegations had spent the previous night in intensive internal discussions. The Zephyrian energy forms flickered with unstable patterns that indicated deep philosophical conflict. The Korath had actually cracked their reinforced platforms through the sheer force of their internal debates. The Veltar collective buzzed with overlapping communications as individual drones struggled to reconcile collective efficiency with newfound respect for individual choice. The Zephyrian position elder, LYX Andra, rose first, her crystalline form more solid than usual as she channeled maximum energy into maintaining coherence. The Zephyrian ascendancy has reached a decision. For 3 millennia, we have viewed physical existence as a limitation to be transcended. We offered other species the gift of energy form evolution and considered their refusal to be willful ignorance. She gestured toward Sarah's helmet. The Human's Chronicle has shown us that our gift was perceived as an ultimatum. Become like us or face abandonment. We now understand that this approach led to the extinction of 37 unique perspectives that could have enriched our civilization. The Elders' energy form pulsed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as Zephyrian determination. Therefore, the Ascendancy proposes a new path forward. Instead of demanding that all species transcend physical matter, we will learn to appreciate the value of material existence. We will establish colonies of Zephyrians who choose to maintain partial physical forms to better interact with matter-based civilizations. Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrians had never compromised their fundamental philosophy before. The Korath Declaration Commander Torgash's response required him to stand, his massive form rising to its full height of nearly 3 meters. The gesture was significant in Korath culture, indicating that he spoke not just for his delegation, but for his entire warrior caste. The Korath have always measured worth through combat prowess and physical strength. We believed that civilizations which refused our challenges were weak and deserved extinction. His voice carried the weight of centuries of tradition. The Human's helmet has shown us warriors who chose death over compromise, sacrifice over survival. These were not weak beings. They were warriors as proud as any Korath. Torgash looked directly at Sarah as he continued. We failed to recognize that true strength sometimes means choosing the harder path of adaptation over the simpler path of destruction. The Korath hegemony hereby proposes to establish a new warrior's code. Strength that preserves is greater than strength that destroys. The implications were staggering. The Korath were offering to fundamentally alter their cultural identity rather than face extinction. The Veltar evolution, the Veltar Queen's response came not through her translator, but through direct neural broadcast to every being in the chamber capable of receiving it. The experience was overwhelming for non-Veltar species, like hearing the thoughts of an entire civilization at once. The collective has processed 347,892 possible outcomes for current conflict scenario. Probability of mutual extinction, 97.3%. Probability of cultural survival through compromise, 64.7%. Logical conclusion. Individual consciousness expansion required for species optimization. The Queen's physical form trembled as she continued. Historical data indicates collective suppression of individual innovation led to strategic inflexibility. Proposal, establishment of individual development protocols. Selected drones will maintain separate consciousness streams to generate adaptive solutions beyond collective parameters. What the Veltar were proposing was nothing less than voluntary schizophrenia on a species level, allowing individual minds to exist within their hive mind structure. Sarah's revelation as the three delegations completed their revolutionary proposals, Sarah Chun stood and opened the case she had brought with her. Inside, nested in protective foam, was another helmet. This one was pristine, unmarked, gleaming with the distinctive alloys used in modern human military equipment. "This is my new helmet," Sarah announced. "Standard issue, fresh from the fabricators, never worn in battle." She lifted it carefully, letting the chamber's lights reflect off its perfect surface. "I had hoped to retire my old helmet today and begin wearing this one." She set the new helmet aside and picked up her scarred companion. But something unprecedented has happened here. For the first time in 5 centuries, warrior civilizations have chosen adaptation over extinction. For the first time, proud species have valued survival over inflexible honor. Sarah walked to the center of the chamber, holding her helmet so that every delegation could see it clearly. This helmet has carried the last words of 47 civilizations. It has been marked by dying warriors who wanted their stories remembered. It has become a monument to the cost of choosing pride over pragmatism. The Althenian testimony, a new voice spoke from the chamber's communication array. The translation software identified it as an Althenian transmission from their homeworld, 47 light-years distant. "This is war leader Calseth of the Althenian Republic. Captain Chun requested that I provide testimony to your summit." The voice carried the unmistakable confidence of a warrior who had found peace without surrendering strength. 40 years ago, our civilization faced the same choice now before your species. We were offered the chance to abandon our warrior traditions in exchange for survival. We chose a third path. The holographic display activated, showing images of the Althenian world, cities that blended advanced technology with traditional architecture, warriors training alongside diplomats, children learning both combat techniques and conflict resolution. "We did not abandon our warrior nature," Calseth continued. "We evolved it. Our greatest victories now are the conflicts we prevent rather than the enemies we destroy. Our strongest warriors are those who can forge peace from the materials of war." The price of peace, as Calseth's testimony concluded, the chamber fell into contemplative silence. Each delegation was processing not just the proposals from their competitors, but the implications of their own revolutionary commitments. Sarah broke the silence by reaching into her equipment kit and withdrawing a small cutting tool. The Althenians understand something that 47 extinct civilizations never learned. Evolution requires sacrifice, but extinction demands everything. She raised the tool to her helmet and made a deliberate cut near the crown, carefully removing a small section of scarred metal. The chamber watched in fascination as she set the fragment aside and produced a small medallion made from the same pristine alloy as her new helmet. "This smooth metal represents your choice today," Sarah said, fitting the unmarked piece into the gap she had created. Not the absence of conflict, but conflict transformed into something that builds rather than destroys. The moment of truth, Elder Lyx Andrus spoke first. "The Zephyrian Ascendancy formally accepts the proposed terms for cultural evolution. We will establish material form colonies and end our policy of forced transcendence." Commander Torgash followed immediately. "The Koroth hegemony accepts the challenge of redefining strength. Our new warrior's code will honor preservation as highly as destruction." The Veltar Queen's response came as a harmonic chorus that every being in the chamber could feel rather than simply hear. Collective accepts individual consciousness integration protocols. Efficiency through diversity will be implemented. The new alliance, what followed, was 6 hours of intensive negotiation, unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. Instead of dividing territory or defining spheres of influence, the three civilizations began planning integrated colonies where their people would live and work together. Zephyrian energy mastery would be shared with Koroth material-shaping techniques and Veltar collective intelligence networks. The military implications alone were staggering. Koroth warriors enhanced by Zephyrian energy forms and coordinated by Veltar tactical networks would be nearly unstoppable. But the greater revolution was cultural, three species learning to value diversity over purity, adaptation over tradition, cooperation over competition. Sarah watched the negotiations with growing amazement. These were the same civilizations that had driven 47 cultures to extinction through their inflexibility. Now, they were demonstrating the very adaptability they had once despised in others. The living monument, as the summit reached its conclusion, Sarah performed one final ceremony. She took her cutting tool and carefully inscribed 3 symbols into the smooth metal patch she had added to her helmet. Not the jagged scars of dying civilizations, but the flowing patterns of cultures choosing to grow. The Zephyrian symbol was a spiral of energy that folded back on itself, representing transcendence that embraced rather than abandoned its origins. The Koroth marking was a mountain that bent without breaking, showing strength through flexibility. The Veltar inscription was a network pattern where individual nodes maintained their distinctiveness while contributing to collective purpose. This helmet now carries a new kind of story, Sarah announced. Not the final words of the dying, but the first words of the reborn. The galactic response news of the Nexus Station Accord spread across the galaxy within hours. The unprecedented alliance between 3 major civilizations sent shockwaves through established power structures. But more importantly, it sent a message to smaller civilizations that adaptation was possible, that survival did not require the surrender of identity. Within weeks, the Alphenian Republic received contact requests from 17 different species. Some were survivors from supposedly extinct civilizations, ready to emerge from hiding. Others were young cultures seeking guidance on how to maintain their traditions while adapting to galactic civilization. The pattern of extinction that had claimed 47 civilizations was finally broken. Sarah's legacy 6 months later. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the Memorial Garden on Altair Prime, the former battlefield where the last free Veltar drones had made their stand. The world had been transformed into a monument to all extinct civilizations, with representatives from the new tripartite alliance tending memorial groves for each lost culture. Her helmet sat in a place of honor at the center of the memorial, its scars and smooth patches telling the complete story of galactic civilization's evolution. Visitors came from across the galaxy to study the markings, to learn the stories of the cultures that had chosen death over compromise and the civilizations that had chosen life over pride. But Sarah herself had moved on to new work. Her pristine helmet gleamed in the afternoon light as she prepared for another diplomatic mission. The galaxy had learned to choose adaptation over extinction, but the lesson needed to be taught again and again as new civilizations emerged and old conflicts threatened to rekindle. The never-ending story, the war, that had threatened to consume 3 civilizations became instead the foundation for the most successful interspecies alliance in galactic history. The Zephyrian Koroth Veltar Federation grew to encompass dozens of member species, each contributing their unique strengths while learning from the others. Sarah's work became the template for a new kind of diplomacy. Humans, with their unique ability to remember and learn from the mistakes of others, found themselves serving as mediators and historians throughout the galaxy. The concept of memorial diplomacy, using the lessons of extinct civilizations to prevent future extinctions, became standard practice in interspecies negotiations. The helmet's final journey years passed, and Sarah Chin eventually retired from active diplomatic service. But her scarred helmet continued its mission, traveling from world to world as part of a mobile exhibition that shared the stories of the 47 extinct civilizations and the 3 that chose to evolve. Children of a dozen different species would stand before the helmet in wonder, their parents explaining how each mark represented a choice between pride and survival, between tradition and adaptation. The smooth patches were perhaps even more important than the scars, showing that evolution was possible, that cultures could change without losing their essential nature. The helmet became more than a historical artifact, it became a symbol of hope. When new conflicts arose, when proud civilizations stood at the crossroads between extinction and evolution, they would send representatives to study the helmet's lessons. Most chose the path of adaptation. The human gift in the end, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization was not their technology or their military might, but their ability to remember. While other species focused on the future or lived entirely in the present, humans carried the weight of the past and used it to illuminate the path forward. The galaxy learned that there was wisdom in scars, that the marks left by failure could guide others to success. The extinct civilizations commemorated on Sarah's helmet had not died in vain. Their sacrifices had finally found meaning in the survival of those who came after, and in the depths of space, on worlds where no sapient life had yet evolved, new civilizations were beginning their journey toward the stars. When they eventually reached the point where they, too, would face the choice between pride and pragmatism, they would find waiting for them the accumulated wisdom of those who had walked that path before. The story would continue, as all good stories do, with each chapter building on the lessons of the last. The helmet would be there to remind them that survival was possible, that adaptation was strength, and that sometimes the greatest victory was simply choosing to live another day, that in a galaxy that had learned to value memory as much as ambition, extinction was no longer inevitable. The 47 civilizations marked on Sarah Chen's helmet had become the foundation upon which countless others would build their futures. Their stories would never end.